WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar. Good afternoon and many thanks for tuning into West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and all around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Senegal begins trial of hundreds of people arrested during the recent violent demonstrations in Dakar and Senegal. The Burkina Faso government announces a reward package of up to 180 million CFA francs for the whereabouts of several terrorist commanders. Opposition coalition groups in Guinea-Bissau secured the majority of seats in Sunday's parliamentary election. And former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo files an appeal at the IEC following his removal from the electoral list. Please stay with us for details of these stories and more.
Here is James Adjapong with Newslink.
Glad you could join us. Let's begin in Senegal as the trial opens for hundreds of people arrested in the days of violence that followed the sentencing of opposition leader Ousmane Sonko to 2 years in prison. Among those on trial are minors between 15 and 18 who will appear before a juvenile court, while those under the age of 14 were acquitted. The majority of others arrested, particularly adults, are being prosecuted for disturbing the peace, undermining state security, and calling for insurrection. Recall, last Sunday, the police announced that they had arrested around 500 people, including minors and foreigners. Meanwhile, PASTEF, the party of opposition leader Ousmane Sonko, announced that 21 people were killed in violent demonstrations last week. While calling for an impartial investigation into the killings, the political group demanded the release of more than 700 political detainees. El Haj Malik Njai, spokesperson for PASTEF, speaking at a press conference late Thursday, condemned what he called the continuous house arrest of their leader Ousmane Sonko. As a reminder, the Senegalese government had announced 16 dead and 500 others arrested for the violence. The Burkina Faso authorities are adopting a new and monetized approach to countering terrorism and radicalism in the country. Ouagadougou, via social media post, announced a bounty on several leaders or commanders of terrorist networks that carry out attacks on the territory. The ministry in charge of security says it will reward anyone who could help find these people with between 100 and 180 million CFA francs. More details in this report by our Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Kaba and voice in our studios by Imo Edit.
The social media post late Thursday says the authorities in Burkina Faso are actively searching for 20 alleged terrorists. With their photos in hand, the government is appealing for help in finding these people. The suspected terrorist commanders are wanted for participation or complicity in the planning or carrying out of terrorist acts. Above each image displayed is a financial reward ranging from 100 to 180 million CFA francs with a supporting caption that reads, and I quote, "If you provide information that could lead to the arrest or neutralization of one of these individuals, you will receive the amount indicated on the photo concerned." End of quote. This is not the first time that Burkina Faso security authorities have called for help in tracking down suspected terrorists, but this is the first time that there has been a public bounty on heads in the fight against armed terrorist groups. It remains unknown if this measure would lead to the arrest of these commanders and reduce attacks across Burkina Faso, a Sahelian country ravaged by insurgency since 2015. More than 2 million people are internally displaced, while thousands of people, including security operatives, have been killed, triggering the world's worst humanitarian crisis.
That report was filed by our Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Kaba and voice in our studios by Imo Edit. The trial of Umar Sila, alias Fondike Mangwe, Ibrahim Ajalo, and Sekou Yayabari opened in Conakry on Thursday. The coordinator and head of operations of the National Front for the Defense of the Constitution, FNDC, and the executive secretary of the UFR are on trial before the Disseminating Court, which has been relocated to the Conakry Court of Appeal. They are accused of participating in an unauthorized gathering, obstruction of freedom of movement, destruction of private and public buildings, and intentional assault and battery. The first two individuals denied the charges against them, and the third accused person failed to appear due to health reasons. Abdullahi Hassan completes the story.
First, Ibrahima Jallo, then Umar Sila. The two defendants spent nearly 4 hours on the stand, but neither of them admitted the facts. The prosecutor accused them of having organized and participated in the banned demonstration on 28 and 29 July 2022. The two FNDC leaders protested against what they called a violation of their rights, in particular their right to demonstrate. The fact that the defendants are denying the charges does not seem to faze the civil party's lawyers who promised to return to the case. Fonike Mange and Ibrahima Jallo launched an attack against the CNRD. They underlined the junta's desire to remain in power forever and to satisfy the demands of the living forces. The activists were often called to order as they attempt to turn the court into a forum, said the prosecutor. At the end of the questioning of the two defendants, the judge wanted to hear from Sekou Kalu, the civil party in the case. Because of his absence, Cabinet Keita adjourned the case to today, June 9, at the request of the prosecutor, even though the defense lawyers had objected.
Abdullahi Hassan for that report.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
If you are just joining us, this is Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM, and we are streaming all around the world on WADR.org. The major political opposition coalition in Guinea-Bissau will again dominate the new National People's Assembly after its victory in Sunday's legislative vote. Results by the National Electoral Commission Thursday revealed the five-party Terraranka coalition won 54 of Parliament's 102 seats. President Umaru Sissoco Embalo's party, Madam G15, came second with 29 seats. Matisi reports.
If anything, the reason for dissolving the previous assembly by Embalo a year ago is very much alive since the opposition has the majority. This is the argument of some political analysis. According to the result from the weekend vote announced Thursday, the ruling party, Madam G15, came second with 29 seats, while the opposition coalition, Terraranka, secured a total of 54 seats. In the previous parliament, the main opposition party, the African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde, PAIGC, held the majority. President Umaru Sissoco Embalo dissolved the parliament in May 2022 after a tussle and postponed the legislative elections originally scheduled for the following December and for a second time in March this year. Bamba Kute is a Bissau-Guinean political analyst.
Everyone is surprised by this result, starting with the President of the Republic himself. The people have decided to give the PAIGC an absolute majority. Well, it's a combination of events that led to this result. Madam had the necessary means to run an American-style campaign, and the way the number of seats obtained was calculated to the PAIGC's advantage.
While there were concerns of unrest if Madam G15 did not secure a majority in Sunday's election, the capital appeared calm as people celebrated on the streets Thursday. The big question now is who will be appointed Prime Minister and how it will impact the government that essentially has 18 months left. Guinea-Bissau is a small nation that gained independence from Portugal nearly 5 decades ago and has endured continued political turmoil, including multiple coups.
Matisi for that report. Let's take you to Cote d'Ivoire, where dissatisfied with its exclusion from the electoral list, the former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo appeals to the electoral umpire. Gbagbo visited the Independent Electoral Commission on Thursday in Abidjan to be registered and able to vote in the local elections scheduled for September 2, 2023. The former head of state removal from the electoral list follows a sentence to 20 years in prison for the robbery of the Central Bank of West African State BCEAO. Ogio Biarika completes the story.
The former Ivorian president, despite being acquitted by the International Criminal Court (ICC) of crimes against humanity committed during the post-election crisis of 2010 to 2011, remains under a sentence in Cote d'Ivoire. The conviction in 2018, per the state law, means the forfeiture of his civic and political rights, hence his removal from the electoral list. Speaking to journalists on Thursday, Laurent Gbagbo refuted this accusation, saying he has worked all his life to avoid any criminal record, reaffirming that he would not let his name be defiled and sold without a fight. Gbagbo said he put forward several arguments, in particular the fact that he was never summoned for his trial nor notified of the judgment pronounced in his absence. He simply described the 2018 legal clash as politically motivated. Recalling the period he served as head of state from October 2000 to April 2011, Gbagbo argued that he couldn't be tried without due process or before any jurisdiction. He finally called on serving President Alassane Ouattara and Henry Konan Bédié, another former head of state, to leave a peaceful country for the younger generation.
Oge Obiarika filed that report. In other news, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has directed the National Economic Council, NEC, to start a meeting to enhance the minimum wage and intervene in other ways to cushion the effects of subsidy removal. Governor Adjapong Abiodun of Ogun State led oil marketers to meet with the president in Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, and disclosed this announcement. Usman Umar in Abuja completes the story.
The Depot and Petroleum Products Marketers Association of Nigeria, DAPMAN, pledged their support to the president and called for better ways to cushion the effect on the economy. They also pledged to donate 50 to 100 locally made mass buses to the public to alleviate the people's transportation woes. DAPMAN's chairman, Winifred Akpani, said they also spoke to the president about trading in one exchange rate to allow oil marketers to have a free market and aid the new job and business creation.
We all collectively agree that we're going to work at providing real mass transit buses that work. The ones that will run on CNG, which is the compressed natural gas and diesel, interchangeably. And hopefully we're going to start with about 50 to 100. And that is in the very, very short term. And these are locally produced. So you see that we're also providing jobs, a lot more jobs, because we're using local assembly plants. We're not importing this.
Dapo Abiodun, governor of Ogun State, southwestern Nigeria, who led the oil marketers to meet with the president, speaks further on some other initiatives directed by the president.
Mr. President has announced today that, NEC should immediately begin to sit, with the economic team, and marketers should sit down and come up with a wholesome approach that would be beneficial to the common man and generality of Nigerians.
This meeting comes as a result of President Tinubu's promise to take the necessary measures to relieve Nigerians from the fuel subsidy removal policy. During his May 29 inaugural speech at the Eagle Square in Abuja, the president announced that the immediate past administration of Muhammadu Buhari did not make provisions for subsidy in the 2023 budget beyond June 2023. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
The United States Agency for International Development has officially launched a program geared toward transforming the education system in Liberia. The program, Transforming the Education System for Teachers and Students in Liberia, TEST, is to support the Ministry of Education and the National Commission on Higher Education. WADR's Darlington Pogba now reports.
The program is intended to support the Liberian Authority to improve the quality of early childhood education and primary teachers' instructions, among others. According to USAID officials Warren Donowa and Lisa Duan, the new program will ensure equal access to quality education to all Liberians.
We're all here today to share one goal in common, and that's to provide equal access to quality education for everybody here in Liberia.
We've had amazing support, and we greatly appreciate. We work with an impressive group of educational leaders and faculty members at 8 higher education teacher training institutions.
Liberian Deputy Education Minister Alexander Duopo explained that progress has been made in the country's education since 2018.
A few weeks from now, the Ministry of Education along with our partners under this ARAS project, improving results in secondary education. We'll be providing textbooks to all our students in this country.
Director at the National Commission on Higher Education, Edo Nwokoyon, appreciated USAID for initiating such a program, promising that his institution will work closely with the project implementers to ensure its success.
We cannot stop thanking the government and people of the United States of America and USAID for the tremendous support provided to the Ministry of Education and the National Commission on Higher Education to improve the quality of teachers' instructional delivery in our early childhood and primary schools.
The United States has invested hugely in Liberia's education system, with thousands of teachers trained in the last decade and hundreds of thousands of students benefiting. For Newslink on the West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Pogba in Monrovia.
You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM, Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Senegal begins trial of hundreds of people arrested during the recent violent demonstrations in Dakar and Senegal. The Burkina government announces a reward package of up to 180 million CFA francs for the whereabouts of several terrorist commanders. Opposition coalition groups in Guinea-Bissau secured the majority of seats in Sunday's parliamentary election. And former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo files an appeal at the IEC following his removal from the electoral list. Still ahead, we have our newspaper review, guest interview, and some sports updates. Kindly stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
It's 16 minutes past 12 in our studios. Here is West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM. Don't forget to follow all our discussions on Twitter and Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service, and on YouTube at WADR News. In Ghana, the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Authority, as part of efforts to contribute to the country's digitalization agenda, has launched a license delivery service. The service is expected to deliver driver's licenses to clients in the comfort of their homes and offices and other locations of choice. Customers now also have the opportunity to request delivery when they apply for a driver's license at a flat competitive rate of $3 to all destinations across the country. Atiarini Bila Lawson has the story.
The delivery, which will be run by the Ghana Post Company Limited, seeks to clear 80,000 uncollected licenses, prevent congestion and improve compliance among clients, among others. Chief Executive Officer of the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Authority, Kwesi Ajiman-Buzia, says the intergovernment agency collaboration is a step towards a more efficient and effective service delivery to DVLA clients across the country.
The recent growth of DVLA's consumer base has made it necessary to deliver driver licenses to our clients. The foundation of our strategic plan pivots on the atmosphere of people. This association with a sister government institution where core competency in package delivery and nationwide distribution apparatus, augmented by digitization, is therefore obvious, is needful, is necessary.
On his part, Managing Director of the Ghana Post, Bice Osei Kufo, indicated the Ghana Post Company stands ready to deliver on its mandate.
It does not matter where you are in Ghana. DVLA would process your license and Ghana Post will deliver that license to you. It's less. It is only 30 Ghana cedis. Imagine you process your license and even in Accra, and you come to process it at the head office. That 30 Ghana, you lose time, you lose money. Give that money to DVLA and Ghana Post so that we will save you time and the convenience to receive your license at home.
Reporting for Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Atiewin Imbila Lawson in Accra.
This is the newspaper review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
For our newspaper review for today, let's join Sankule Janko in Banjul.
Let's begin today's press review with the Point newspaper, whose lead story reads Gambia to benefit from $20 million climate change funding. Unauthorized $26 million loan shows Basel Council has no standing order. That's according to the audit report. Alleged fraudster denies criminal charges. Gambia relies heavily on imports, that's according to President Barrow. And Barrow said to launch more road projects in 3 regions. Let's move on to the Standard newspaper, and it reads, Barrow commits to create 150,000 jobs, with a photo of the president, of course, as you would expect. That's the lead story for the Standard newspaper. Government borrows $891 million to complete OIC roads. That's another story. GDC resents expulsion of spokesperson. Ex-Vice President delivers Nyerere presidential lecture at Makerere. And opposition wins absolute majority in Guinea-Bissau parliamentary election. Those are the stories from the Standard newspaper. Let's move on to the Fourier newspaper. And the lead story on the Fourier newspaper, and it reads, 2 million government subvention to Basse Area Council still unaccounted. Still with the Fourier newspaper, uncollected waste remains piled in unkept conditions at Serekunda Health Facility. President Barrow says inflation stood at 13.7% during his State of the Nation address. Now, let's move on to the final newspaper for today, and that is the Voice newspaper. The Voice newspaper's lead story also has to do with the State of the Nation's address by President Adama Barrow yesterday at the National Assembly chambers in Banjul. And the lead story of the Voice reads, Gambia relies heavily on imports or consumption of basic commodities. President Barrow, again with his photo as you would expect. Basse Area Council has no strategic plan and activity report. That's according to the audit report. Lamin Fati kicks against bad treatment of persons with disabilities at place of work. And migrant activist urges government to appeal to EU on deportation of Gambians. Of course, there are reports that so many Gambians are on the verge of being deported, particularly from Germany. I'm afraid these are the major stories making headlines on the Gambian dailies. It's back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Sankule Janku, for that newspaper review.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Following the result from Sunday's legislative elections in Guinea-Bissau, the major political opposition coalition won 54 of Parliament's 102 seats, defeating President Umaru Sissoco Embalo's party, Madam G15, which came second with 29 seats. These results, which were released by the National Electoral Commission Thursday, show that the president's quest to adopt a presidential style of the legislature against the previous semi-presidential governance system may suffer a setback. With many political observers and experts seeing this outcome as surprising, the announcement of the result reflects the wish of the majority of people who still support the opposition coalition. Our guest, Dr. Rashid Rahman, an expert in sub-regional parliamentary affairs, shares his opinion on how this legislative seat turnout will shape the administration and consensus building in Bissau's National Assembly. He also advocates for constructive opposition to help stabilize issues.
Well, I think it's very interesting for democracy in Guinea-Bissau, and then I think beyond that in our sub-region. You know, my own country, Ghana, came very close to that a few years ago. But in the end, we ended up with a hung parliament where the two parties in parliament have equal numbers. But the election of the speaker went to the minority party. That is the party that's in opposition. So this is very interesting for me as somebody who watches Parliament, and I think it bodes well for negotiation. It bodes well for consensus building, and then for transparency. Because over the years, in most of our countries, you know, single parties have had majorities, and then they almost always get their way without thinking about the opposition, and sometimes even without thinking about the citizenry. So when you begin having situations like this, I think it would force the hand of government, the party that is in control of the executive, to try to negotiate with Parliament.
So, of course, the previous assembly was dissolved to adopt a more presidential style by creating a new commission to draft a new constitution for Guinea-Bissau. Do you see this agenda fail now that the opposition coalition has secured more votes?
Well, I mean, I'm not too sure about that. But I think the signal that, the outcome of the election clearly sends is that our leaders have to take the interests of the people into consideration in whatever moves and whatever steps that they take. We are living in a world now, in a region now where people are very much aware, unlike maybe years past. Today people are following in Guinea-Bissau what's happening in other parts of the sub-region and beyond. And we are at a point also where people don't just simply vote blindly. I think they think about their well-being and so on and so forth. So the era where presidents and governments think that they can maybe look after their party interests and their own self-interest, I think it's fast becoming extinct. And I believe events in the sub-region, in my own country, in the country where you are seated right now, I think are all events that are supposed to be wake-up calls for our leaders.
So finally, according to reports, the draft constitution, even though was rejected by Guinea-Bissau's parliamentary deputies, had an inherent desire to protect the country's constitutional checks and balances. Do you see that earlier opposition to the drafting of the new constitution as one that was meant to distort an inclusive political system or not, in your view?
Yes, perhaps maybe they oppose it even, before they saw the details. So that is usually the problem sometimes with our opposition parties. Often we have been saying maybe oppose, but be constructive in whatever opposition that you provide. So sometimes parties jump even before having all the details. They jump just simply because something is coming from their opponents. And I think that is distorted opposition. We want an opposition that, yes, will hold the government to account, but where I think there is credit, we have to give credit.
Dr. Rashid Rahman is the Executive Director of the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Now to some sports updates. The Confederation of African Football, CAF, has officially conducted the draw for FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup officially on Thursday, 8 June at the CAF headquarters in Cairo. The first 6 nations with the lowest rankings will take center stage in a round-robin format between 1st to 10th September. The 4 countries that emerge as winners of these ties will then face each other in a round-robin format to determine 2 representatives for Africa at the FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup. Meanwhile, CAF also conducted the official draw of the FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup on Thursday. Morocco has been drawn against Burkina Faso, while Uganda takes on Cameroon and Burundi locks horns with Botswana. And that's it for sports. We have come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM, Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening. And many thanks to our listeners in the Gambia via Hot 104.3 FM and in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio, 98.9 FM, Lofa County. And in Ghana on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi. Inyas Bilimu has been on the console. Many thanks to Mustafa Sek for our Facebook live coverage. Do interact with us via social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. I am James Adjapong. Good afternoon.
News, talk, music. Get it all 24 hours on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar.